This is Primary Intelligence's first Industry Insight series. Our webinar today is Truths and Misperceptions about the State of Win-Loss. It's based on our recent study, State of Win-Loss 2014. I'm Connie Schlossberg, the Digital Marketing Specialist here at Primary Intelligence, and I will be your host for today. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. The presentation will be recorded today, so all phone lines are muted. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so at any time, please feel free to submit your questions via the chat window. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible in the time available. However, if we don't get to your question, I'll have Carolyn follow up with you sometime after the webinar. Great. Now that we have that out of the way, I'm excited to introduce to you Carolyn Galvin as our presenter today. She has some very valuable data points to share with you about the state of win-loss. I'm just going to give you a little background about Carolyn. She's been working in the intelligence space for 20 years now. She started with the CIA as an intelligence officer. She has 2 master's degrees. She teaches business management classes for the University of Maryland. And prior to Primary Intelligence, she had her own consulting company, and she was a program consultant for Primary Intelligence. But now she serves as our Director of Industry Insights. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Carolyn. I'm going to hand the reins over to you.
Thank you, Connie, and thanks to all of you for being here today. I am really excited to share with you some of the results from our first State of Win-Loss survey. The report that we put together and published recently that details the research is over 100 pages long. And as I thought about sharing the information with you today, I realized that I can't possibly do justice to a 100-plus page report. So we won't be going into all avenues of the report, but what I do want to share with you are some of the more interesting and relevant findings from the research. Before I do that, however, we'll set the stage. So I'll just give you a very brief overview of primary intelligence, where we've come from, where we are today, and then we'll talk about win-loss. What is win-loss? What are the different meanings of win-loss, the different iterations, and so forth. I'll also give you some background and methodology in terms of the state of win-loss research and the study that we've done. And then after we talk about the key findings, we'll have a brief section on some recommendations and conclusions. As Connie mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session, and then we'll also preview some of the upcoming research that we're planning to focus on over the next year at Primary Intelligence. Last but not least, we'll have the results from our drawing of our first and second prize winners. For those of you who participated in the State of Win-Loss research, you'll remember that we promised an iPad mini to the first place winner and a $100 Amazon gift card to the second place winner. So we'll announce those winners today. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So who is Primary Intelligence? Well, Ken Allred is really the face and the force behind Primary Intelligence. Ken started Primary Intelligence about 15 years ago. At the time, Ken was a sales executive. He was selling into companies as a sales executive, and he didn't always know why he was winning or losing deals. There were times when he had won a deal where he was sure he had lost, and there were times where he had lost a deal where he was sure he had won. So Ken started doing win-loss analysis on his own deals, and he realized in doing so that he could help other organizations and other sales executives to do the same thing. So Ken hired 3 friends, and they took over his family's 500 square foot unfinished basement, set up their desks right next to the furnace and the water softener, and Primary Intelligence was born. From those very humble beginnings, you can see how Primary Intelligence has really grown to a global organization. Our 2 main areas of focus are win-loss analysis and customer experience analysis, and we're managing close to 600 win-loss and customer experience programs for our clients today. Every year, we're evaluating over $20 billion worth of purchase decisions. Every year, we're analyzing over 3,000 deals and customer engagements, and we're working with many of you, sales, marketing, product, CI, and customer leaders from around the world, 6,000 people that we're supporting. of the Fortune 20, 6 of those companies are our clients. So we have really come a long way under Ken's guidance and leadership. So what is win-loss analysis? You know, sometimes when I'm talking with friends or acquaintances, they'll ask me, well, what do you do for a living? And I'll tell them I work at a win-loss analysis firm. And sometimes people aren't really sure what that means. They certainly know what market research is, but they don't always understand what win-loss is. Win-loss, it's pretty simple. At a very basic level, it's explaining buyer choice. It explains why certain buyers are choosing certain vendors, certain solutions over other vendors and other solutions. And so at a very basic level, it's helping executives understand why they're winning and why they're losing. But win-loss can also be very transformative for organizations if they allow it to be. By collecting the information over the weeks, months, and years that the programs are in place, executives can really see those outstanding performances that they're doing or subpar performance. And so in this way, they can transform their organization and leverage best practices. They can avoid root cause behaviors and really transform the organization. In this way, win-loss is sometimes compared to Kaizen, which is the Japanese practice of continuous improvement. So in terms of win-loss in practice, we see really differences in terms of program maturity. When I think about win-loss, I really like to think of it as a continuum. So when I was a program consultant, I saw my clients at different levels of this continuum. At one end of the continuum or the spectrum are organizations that have at least an individual, usually a group of people who are responsible for win-loss analysis. They are continuously collecting information on why they're winning, why they're losing, getting as close to 100% as possible. They're taking that information, they're combining it with other internal company information, sales operations information, marketing information. They're also combining it with secondary information or information from other vendors that they're working with. So they're synthesizing that information, they're analyzing the information, and then on a regular basis, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly, they're feeding that information to their executive team. So doing regular readouts in terms of the program results. Importantly, the executives are also making changes based on that intelligence. So they're not just saying, oh, that's nice, and moving on to the next item, but they're saying, okay, that's interesting. How can we change to make sure that we're winning more deals and serving our buyers in the best way that we can? At the other end of the spectrum are organizations that may be doing win-loss analysis on a very ad hoc basis. There may not be any individuals that are formally assigned to the program. There may be people who are doing, different people who are doing win-loss analysis as they have time. Oftentimes, changes aren't made based on the data, based on the feedback, and it tends to be very ad hoc in nature. Within that continuum, so the very sophisticated programs and the very rudimentary programs, we certainly see clients at different levels of the continuum, and that will certainly continue to be the case. But of course, we're all trying to move to that more sophisticated level as much as possible. We also see different organizational approaches in terms of win-loss analysis. Win-loss analysis could mean to some organizations that they're simply collecting feedback from the sales representatives, or it could mean that they're collecting feedback from both sales representatives and buyers. Access to win-loss information is different in different organizations. So sometimes organizations will say, no, I only want our senior sales team to have access to it, or I only want our senior executive team. In other cases, organizations have wide open access where they've given pretty much everyone who's interested access to the information. Mandatory versus voluntary participation is another difference in terms of the organizational approach. It's one of the questions we looked at in the survey. Do you mandate participation or is it voluntary? So different approaches by different organizations based on cultures and how they do business. At Primary Intelligence, we look at win-loss analysis through the lens of 4 key components. And again, I'll keep this brief, but just to kind of give you a framework in terms of how we view the win-loss process. One of the ways that we look at this is through solution performance. This is the service or the product that our clients are selling into the market or offering the market. So we ask questions about maybe user interface or usability, integrations, how well the solution is performing compared to other competitors, and in terms of buyer needs. We also look at sales impact. When I was a programs consultant, and I was a PC for over 2 years at Primary Intelligence, so I certainly saw my share of feedback from buyers, but understanding buyers' business needs came up time and time again in terms of one of the leading sales impact areas that buyers are most interested in. So how does the sales team, how do the sales reps, how well do they understand buyers' business needs? This could also relate to things such as product knowledge or presentation and demonstration. Company attitude has to do with looking at the company holistically. So how is the company perceived in the market? Are they perceived as laggards or leaders, especially when we see this in the technology space? Are they leading the market? What is their reputation? How is their company financial viability? How well are their customer references rating them? And then pricing is an area that we call out separately because it is so important in many deals in terms of win-loss analysis. Some of our clients look at pricing from a holistic standpoint, so they might be looking at the total contract price or total cost of ownership, TCO. Other times we have clients who look very discretely at certain pricing elements, so maybe license pricing, maintenance pricing, services pricing, those types of things. So that's just a little bit of background about win-loss, what it is, and win-loss in practice. In terms of the state of win-loss research in the background, you might be wondering, what is this all about? Why did Primary Intelligence go out and survey people in terms of win-loss analysis? What were they trying to discover? Well, we really had two main goals in terms of the research. One was we wanted to just, at a fundamental operational level, we wanted to understand how organizations are performing win-loss analysis and how they're using the data. So we asked some just very operational questions, so things such as who within your organization is responsible for collecting win-loss information? Who's responsible for analyzing the information? How much do you spend every year on your win-loss programs? How long have your programs been in place? So just kind of those basic questions about what companies are doing with win-loss analysis. And then the other goal in terms of the research that we've done was to try to understand how much of an impact win-loss programs are having in terms of company results. So here we were looking really at three different areas, and I'll explain those to you now. One area was program success rates. So we were asking people how successful their win-loss programs were in terms of increasing win rates, improving buyer understanding, providing actionable competitive intelligence, improving marketing efforts, or improving product decision making. So overall program success, how successful are the programs? That was the first area. The second area in terms of that impact was win-loss IQ or win-loss acuity. And here we were trying to understand how well the respondents in the survey, how well they understood buyers and what was important to buyers, how well they understood the buying process, how well they understood why they're winning and losing in competitive sales opportunities, and how well they understood competitor strengths and weaknesses. So that was the second area, win-loss IQ. The third and final kind of metric or impact area was company performance. And here we were asking how much the company or the division's performance has improved in specific areas between the previous year and this year. Those specific areas were revenue growth, sales win rate, sales rep effectiveness, marketing effectiveness, product competitiveness. And so what we did was we took those three areas, program success rates, win-loss IQ, and company performance metrics, and we overlaid that data onto the operational questions. So we can tell you, and we did tell you within the research, the full report, that companies that are doing XYZ are seeing more significant revenue growth year over year, or they're able to produce more competitive actionable competitive intelligence. So we were able to match up and provide those best practices in terms of what's most effective for win-loss analysis programs. So that's really just a little bit about the background and where we were going and what we were thinking in terms of those win-loss programs and the research that we were doing. In terms of the actual methodology, we had a 60-question online survey. It was all online, no telephone interviews in this particular instance. Most of the questions were closed-ended questions, although there were two that were open-ended questions. The timing for the survey outreach and collection was March to October of last year. We reached out to over 5,000 individuals, got feedback from 175 people, which is within the normal range of what we expect in terms of survey results. I will also say that in terms of those 175 respondents, most were in charge of or involved with their organization's win-loss efforts, and the vast majority of respondents were at the level of director, manager, or employee. We did have some executives as well, but close to 80% of the folks that were responding were at the director, manager, or employee level. We also had responses from sales, marketing, product, support, education training, so a variety of different departments within organizations, and most of the respondents at the time of the survey were working in North American organizations. However, we did have some feedback as well from folks in EMEA and Latin America. So just a little background there in terms of the methodology and the background of the study. So at this point, we're going to pivot. We're going to go into some of the key findings, and we'll start off with the key findings with some kind of high-level information that we'll be sharing with you about the survey. And then we're going to look at three specific case studies, three data points from the research that we'll go into with some depth. And I'm going to tell you some stories about them that will help to cement the information for you and kind of the learnings from the research. So we'll do that now, but very quickly, before we do that, we're going to take the next 5 or 10 seconds, so again, very quickly, and we're going to just run a quick poll with the folks on the phone today. And the poll question is, do you have a win-loss program in place at your organization today? So Connie, if you could run that poll for us and let us know what the responses say.
Sure. We have the poll open now, folks. We'd love for you to participate. Looks like many of you have participated. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. You should, let's see, close. I know, Carolyn, you can't see this. I'm going to share the results. Wow, it looks like we have 67% of you who have a win-loss program in place, 22% of you don't, and a few of you, 11% of you are unsure. What do you think about that, Carolyn?
That's great, and that really pretty closely mirrors the findings in terms of the survey results. So we found in the state of win-loss survey that about 3/4, 76% of organizations are performing win-loss analysis today. So fairly similar in terms of the folks that are involved in the webinar today. This number, our number, is possibly a little bit higher than the general population. Now I say that because in the actual report we also include some secondary information from Pragmatic Marketing. They did their own study and looked at win-loss analysis and found 20% of the population involved in win-loss analysis programs. We think our number is probably a little bit higher than the general population because many of the respondents are actively involved in ongoing win-loss programs at their organizations. But in our study, 76% of organizations are performing win-loss. So of course, what we like to do and what we did do was to peel back the onion and look at this data a little bit more discreetly. So when we do that, and we focus only on win analysis frequently, we're only looking at how often organizations are analyzing wins. We can see here that about a third of organizations are analyzing all large and or strategic sales wins on a regular basis. If we look at the number just below that, we see 15% of organizations are analyzing all sales wins on a regular basis. So combined about 50% of organizations are looking at either all wins or all large and or strategic wins. We see a very similar story in terms of loss analysis frequency. Here about 33%, so about a third of organizations conducting loss analysis on large and or strategic losses, and 17% on all losses. So again, about 50% of all losses and all wins are being analyzed on a consistent basis. That number is pretty good, but really to have greater confidence in terms of knowing buyer feedback and knowing that it's consistent, organizations, we feel, should be trying to boost that percentage to a higher number. We at Primary Intelligence are trying to get as close to 100% coverage as possible. Why is that? Well, some people, and I've heard this from some of my clients, they might view certain wins or losses as insignificant. They might say, well, we don't need to conduct any win analysis. We know why we're winning. We only want to conduct loss analysis. The problem with that is that when we look at the information, especially from an aggregate level, so when we're combining all of the information, we might be missing some important markers in the roadmap. So when we look at things like importance ratings or performance ratings, if we're only analyzing 50% or maybe fewer wins and or losses, we might not be getting the correct reading and accurate reading from our buyers in terms of what they believe is important and how companies are doing, how the performance ratings are as well in those specific areas. We have found in the research that companies that are conducting win-loss analysis on a regular basis are seeing 3 to 7 times higher win rates. And you can really see this represented here in this chart very vividly when we overlay win rate percentages on top of the question of whether or not win-loss is done. So we separated out the win rate categories in 3 different areas. So 0 to 20% win rate, 21 to 50%, and 50% plus. In every area, those organizations that are conducting win-loss analysis are seeing significantly higher win rates compared to organizations that say, no, we don't do that, or, gee, I really don't know if we do or not. So really, really telling. We also asked, this is one of our open-ended questions in the survey, we asked people to tell us in the last 6 months, what was the most significant thing that your organization's win-loss program helped you with? And you can see here some of the responses that we got back from people. So competitive forces of understanding who my competitors are. Sometimes in some industries it's very fluid. You have companies that are entering and leaving very quickly, mergers and acquisitions, that type of thing. So just trying to keep up with competitive forces is so important. Getting specific feedback on opportunities that are lost and helping to increase future win rates. That's really what we're trying to do here, reflect on how we can improve in the future. Improving the sales process, improving measurement techniques, engaging sales reps with clients, and then also just looking for and implementing best practices and learning what customers value. So important in terms of our buyers and understanding their business needs. So that's just at a very high level some information in terms of who's conducting win-loss and looking specifically at win and loss analysis. At this point, I'd like to talk about those 3 specific areas, so those 3 case studies that I'd like to go deep on in terms of the analysis and the data that we collected and really try to help you to understand how important some of the findings are. So the first area that we'll look at has to do with the desired frequency of win-loss data. In the survey, the question that we asked respondents was, how often would you like access to your organization's win-loss analysis data and findings? This was a single select question, meaning respondents had to choose one answer. In some of the questions we allowed them to choose multiple answers, but here we said, no, you've got to pick one. And as you can see here, close to 60% of people said, I want real-time access to the information. Wherever I need it, whenever I need it, I want to be able to log on and see that information. Now, at Primary Intelligence, this was not surprising to us. We have a dashboard. It provides our clients with a web-based real-time interface, and we have gotten feedback from our clients saying, we really like this. We like the fact that we can be in any time zone at any hour of the day or night. We can log in. We can have instant access. So this isn't real surprising to us. But as I was looking through the data and as I was putting the report together and putting the presentation together, I thought about this concept of real-time access and how it can really change behaviors. And while I was working on the report, working on the presentation, I had something happen to me in my personal life where it was impacting my behavior personally, and I could see these analogies with primary intelligence and real-time information and win-loss in general and real-time information. So this is the story I'm going to tell you for our first case study and some analogies between the story. The story has to do with Fitbit. This year for Mother's Day, my husband got me a Fitbit. And Fitbit, you may be aware, it's a wearable technology. It's a wristband that you can wear. And pretty much at any time of the day or night, you can get some key statistics. So how many steps you've taken, how many stairs you've climbed, how many miles you've walked or run. It gives you this instant information just by pressing a little button on the side of the wristband. And I have to tell you that before I got this Fitbit, I was not a couch potato. I was somebody who worked out every day, but I would pretty much just work out and then forget about my exercising or my activity level until the next day rolled around. So when my husband mentioned, I'm going to get you this Fitbit, I was kind of like, oh, great, that's nice, but, I'm already pretty fit and it'll be nice, but it won't be pretty critical. Well, let me tell you that this little Fitbit has completely changed my activity and my behavior, because I can see when I set a certain goal for myself, if I haven't met it, I'm going to ramp up my activity to make sure I meet that goal. I can see not only my daily activity, but I can also telescope out and I can see weekly activity or activity every 2 weeks, every month. It gives me aggregate information as well. So in this way, it has changed my behavior to the better. In the same way, by having real-time access to your win-loss information, it can also change behavior at an enterprise level. So the diagram here on the right is showing you the primary intelligence dashboard. This is all demo data, so it's not live data, but it shows you the opportunity name, it tells you who was selected, the deal size, when the decision date was. It gives you information just at a real quick thumbnail perspective, if it was a win or loss, week win, week loss, that type of thing. It gives you competitive advantage information, the little number in the middle, how much advantage did we have, how much disadvantage did we have. So you can drill into each of these tiles. You can get specific information, telescope in to see that specific feedback. So if I was a sales rep for Bedrock Plumbing and I saw that it was a strong loss and I had a pretty significant competitive disadvantage here, I would be drilling into this information and I'd say, okay, what did I do wrong? Where could I improve? And I could get instant information and feedback. In the same way, we can telescope out. So we have information on an opportunity quadrant, and we're showing here solution and sales experience and where each of the opportunities fit within this quadrant. Now, similar to many quadrants, the Gartner quadrant, for example, you want to be in the upper right-hand side. If you're not, if you're down here in the lower left, it's very instructive. So again, if I was a rep and I had any clients down here in the lower left, I would be reading those profiles with a lot of interest. And I can tell you, as a former program consultant, when I read those profiles that were in that lower left quadrant, I could see a lot of angry remarks and reasons that these opportunities were in the lower left quadrant. So very instructive quickly in terms of seeing where you are. There's also information on key performance indicators, so how likely to recommend or to do future business, how is our product quality, again, telescoping in or out. We also offer aggregate information, so what we call widgets allow our clients to see information at an aggregate level. So here, why am I winning in general? Why am I losing in general? What are my strengths and weaknesses? What were the key reasons that my buyers are buying from me or not buying from me? So in the same way that I can see quickly, easily, real-time information about my activity level, sales reps, sales leaders, anybody within the organization can quickly see, okay, this is how we're doing. This is our dashboard. They can telescope in and out in terms of that real-time access. And if we look then, if we overlay that information about the frequency of access on with information about win rate. So we overlay the win rate information on top of the question. Again, we can see very clearly here that organizations that have real-time access to their information are doing much better in terms of their win rates. Going back to the question about the most significant thing that the win-loss program has helped with, this particular individual said, it's really helpful to see what my competitors are doing in real time instead of 6 months later. Again, in some industries, it's very, very fluid. The competitive landscape changes very quickly. So having information that's 6 months old, it can be very detrimental. We want the information as current as possible. And when we look at, again, we overlay information about impact of win-loss with that question about real-time access, we can see here that in every category, revenue growth, sales win rate, sales rep effectiveness, marketing effectiveness, product competitiveness, that we are doing better when we have real-time access to that information. So just a little bit of a kind of a deep dive here in terms of the importance of real-time access to the information and some of the results from the survey. So that was the first case study I wanted to share with you. The second case study has to do with how we're collecting win-loss information. So this was another single select question, and the question was, how does your organization collect win-loss analysis data? And the choices here were, we're only collecting from buyers, we're only collecting from sales reps, or we're collecting from both buyers and sales reps. And again, close to 60% of organizations are collecting from both buyers and sales reps. And again, we applaud this. At Primary Intelligence, we see this as a best practice. For our clients, on their behalf, we will go out and interview buyers through both an online survey and a telephone survey. So we get the buyer feedback first. We then, after we publish the profile onto the dashboard, we then invite the people who were involved in that opportunity, so the sales rep, sales leadership, anybody else who was involved in the opportunity or named by the buyer, so maybe it had to do with product, so product management or service and support, anybody who was touched by that opportunity, we invite them to be on what we call a debriefing or a discovery call. And we ask them, why is it that the buyer said XYZ? Or why do you think the buyer felt this way? We want to see the feedback, the other side of the coin, if you will, the feedback from the sales rep and the internal feedback and their side of the story. I will tell you, as a former program consultant, that most cases, I would say probably 95 to 97% of the time, the stories mirrored each other. The buyer information, the buyer feedback was very similar to the sales rep feedback or the account team feedback. However, there were a couple of instances where I felt like I was in completely different opportunities, that the buyer feedback and the account team feedback was so vastly different that it was in that case, in those cases, it was especially critical to get that feedback from the sales teams. So I want to share with you, this is my second story that has to do with collection methodology, and this is a story about primary intelligence. It's a true story. It's something that happened at Primary Intelligence a couple of months ago, and I'm going to tell you this story not so I can share our warts with you, but so that I can really show you how important it is to collect both buyer and sales rep feedback. So our story starts up here at the top with a potential customer, a prospect, contacting us about a win-loss program. So great, we've got a prospect. Well, not so great is the fact that we didn't get back to this person in over 2 weeks. Interesting. Well, the prospect got tired of waiting and they went to a competitor. Not unreasonable. They thought we weren't interested. At Primary Intelligence, we drink our own Kool-Aid, we eat our own dog food, and so we conduct win reviews and loss reviews on opportunities that we've won or we've lost. We want to understand what we're doing well. We want to understand where we can improve. So we did a win-loss review, a loss review in this case, and we asked the buyer, what happened? Why didn't you choose us? Where was the breakdown? And the buyer said, well, you guys never got back to me. I couldn't wait forever. I never heard a response, so I moved on. I found another provider to help me, another source, another company. Well, when our sales vice president heard that, he just about hit the roof. He went directly to the sales rep and he demanded to know what happened. Why didn't you get back to this person? Why didn't you follow up? And the sales rep very calmly said, I did. I contacted that person the day I got the lead, the very same day. Oh, the very same day? Well, how can that be? Somehow these stories are not meshing, they're not making sense. Well, when we did some additional research, we found that the rep got the lead 2 weeks after the customer submitted the lead. Oh, why? Why did we get the lead so late? The breakdown, when the customer or the prospect filled out the contact us information on our website, that information was going to an unmonitored email inbox. That was the problem. That was the root cause. If we had stopped down here and we had only collected the buyer feedback and we hadn't gone to this rep probably would have either been at a minimum reprimanded, if not fired. And I happen to know the rep. The rep is an outstanding rep. He does a great job. He's very responsive. But we would have been penalizing and fixing the wrong problem. Importantly, we could have potentially lost a very good rep and still not gotten to the root cause. We still would have had the same problem happening in the future. So it's really important to hear, again, both sides of the story to know what to fix and what not to fix. When we overlay that data in terms of how we're collecting data on top of program success, again, we can see here in every instance we're doing better when we're collecting information from buyers and reps together. Now, this is true when we compare this to collecting data from buyers, but it's especially true when we're only collecting information from sales reps. So really important there in terms of collecting information from both sources and hearing both sides of the story. So that's the second case study I wanted to share with you. The third and final case study that we'll look at has to do with sentiment about the amount of win-loss data that people have access to today. So the question here that we asked, and again it was another single select question, was do you have enough win-loss analysis data to be effective in your role today? You can see here 55% of people said I need more win-loss data. Importantly, nobody said, I don't need access to win-loss data. So that was interesting as well. But only about 1 in 5 people said, yeah, I have enough win-loss data today. What we found, and I'll share some of the quantitative information as metric information with you in just a minute, but what we found in general was that the people who said, I need more win-loss data were at a disadvantage. They were performing less well compared to people who said, I have enough win-loss data today. So at Primary Intelligence, we like to think about win-loss data and the amount of win-loss data our clients receive as being a steady flow of information. We like to see that organizations and business leaders have a consistent stream of buyer feedback, market feedback, competitive feedback, so that they're constantly appraised of how they're doing in the market. And one of the ways that we do this is by having ongoing reviews, what we call debriefing or discovery sessions of the different opportunities that we're evaluating. And we often refer to this as watching the game tape, which is a sports analogy for winning and losing teams watching their game tape to see where they performed well, where they could improve. And for example, you can be pretty darn sure that both the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors are watching their game tapes today, especially Golden State. So with that in mind, I wanted to share with you a third and final story here in terms of information, the amount of information and game tape. So this is an actual Pee Wee football team based in Utah. And this was a team that was very, very successful. They had gone to the state championships and they had done very well. Well, the coach on this team decided that this team was doing so well, they didn't really need to keep watching their game tape. They should be out doing more drills on the field. Now, he did send the game tape to each of these individual kids, these 10-year-old kids, and their parents and said, hey, you know, it would be really helpful if you could watch this game tape and you could do an evaluation in terms of how you could improve or how the team could improve. But you know what? You might have guessed, very few of these kids did that. Very few of them watched their game tape on their own. And even when they did watch the game tape, they weren't looking for areas where they weren't performing well. They were looking for areas where, hey, I did really well in this play. And they certainly weren't looking at a holistic level in terms of how the team could improve overall. They were just looking at their own small piece of the action. Well, as you might imagine, the team started losing games. They started slipping. The coach, realizing the importance of game tape, reinstituted it, put it back in practice, cut back on some of the drill time. And the great outcome of this story is that they were able to recoup, they were able to go back to the state championships, and they were able to win again at the state championships. So thankfully, luckily, the coach realized quickly the importance of the game tape. But in the same way, the analogy here is, you know, in the same way that sports teams do this, it's really important to review your game tape on a regular basis as a group. People like sales managers, sales leaderships that are managing different account teams, different sales reps, they have a higher level view. They can see the whole play on the field. They can see new competitors. They can see plays that aren't working well with other groups, and here's what they did instead. They can offer those recommendations. In the same way, other team members, so maybe somebody from product, maybe somebody from support, they can also see a holistic level. People as a group can connect the dots and really see the benefit of looking at those opportunities as a group and watching the game tape. So again, if we look at some of the overlays in terms of the impact of I need more win-loss data, I have enough win-loss data, we can see here that these numbers are pretty striking in terms of the differences and the disadvantage for people who and organizations who say they need more win-loss data compared with those that say I have enough. And this is especially telling in terms of providing actionable competitive intelligence. Over 2-point gap for these folks who are not getting enough information, aren't able to provide actionable competitive intelligence. When we look at win-loss IQ, the numbers aren't quite as stark, but still, again, in every category, organizations with enough win-loss data, individuals with enough win-loss data are doing better, especially in the category of knowing why we lose in competitive sales opportunities. And following on from that, company performance, we see here sales rep effectiveness is impacted the most. And this isn't surprising, right? If I'm a sales rep and I'm not watching my game tape, I don't have enough information in terms of competitive win-loss information. How can I improve? It's very, very hard. So those are just three quick case studies, the Fitbit, the primary intelligence example, and the game tape in terms of really helping to solidify the information and help it be very meaningful for you in terms of bringing some of the findings to life. We'll go ahead and just wrap up here in terms of some of the conclusions and the recommendations. We saw at the beginning really the stark differences in win rates for organizations that have win-loss programs in place today. So if you've got a win-loss program in place, terrific, keep it going. If you don't, start one if you can, even if it's something small. It doesn't have to be grand or big at the beginning. Just start small. Start gathering buyer feedback, sales rep feedback, start thinking about it and synthesizing it with other internal information. Look for ways to implement real-time access for your users. Certainly if you're using an external provider such as Primary Intelligence, there are ways to do that and that's offered. But even if you're doing this internally on your own, can you post information to a SharePoint directory, for example? Give people that real-time access to the information. Collecting information from buyers and reps, as we saw from our own personal example, really, really important. And watching game tape, making sure you've got a steady stream of information and tape to review. As I mentioned, we've got lots more details in the full report. If you haven't had an opportunity to look at that, I'll show you in just a second how you can have access to the report. And we also are planning to do another state of win-loss research project at the end of this year. So if you're interested and would like to participate, we would love to have your feedback. The more information we get, the higher our confidence in terms of the data. So we will be posting all of these links on our website. We'll be posting the entire presentation on our website by end of day tomorrow, but if you would like to just jot these down now, that's fine as well. But information on the current report, participating in our next survey. We've got our own industry insights tab within our website or on our website. So if you're interested in seeing information about the work that we're doing for our industry reports, please feel free to go there. If you'd like to be on our mailing list for new studies that we're going to be publishing, please let us know. We'd be happy to alert you and let you know that as well. And of course, the main website for primary intelligence is at the bottom. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Connie for any questions that have come in during the presentation.
Yes, Carolyn, we've got lots of good questions. The first question is, how can you increase response rate?
That is a really, really good question. And I can tell you that the vast majority of our clients do not offer a remuneration. You certainly can offer a gift card or some sort of gift, a physical gift to your clients, to your buyers, if you'd like. But for the most part, we don't feel that's necessary. Why is that? Well, one reason is that buyers really want to give you their feedback, and we find that this is especially true for very long engagements or engagements that were somehow atypical. Maybe there was a lot of political infighting going on within the client organization or the customer organization. So we find that in a lot of cases, buyers want to give their feedback, especially if maybe they wanted to choose a certain company as the selected vendor, but they were overruled sometimes. We find that the best attitude in terms of collecting the feedback, the best attitude that you can take is to go to your buyers and you can be very humble and you can say, look, we've got a win-loss program in place. You go to them at the beginning of the engagement, so you say, whether you choose us or you choose someone else, we would really like to know your feedback. We're trying to improve, we're trying to get better. If you could just spend some time with us or with our vendor and give us that feedback at the end, we would really appreciate it. It's really, really important when you're doing the collection, the feedback, that if it was a loss, that you do not use that opportunity to try and reopen the bid. It was a lost opportunity. We accept that. We hope to be able to do better next time, but it's certainly not a way to get back into that specific opportunity. But certainly going to the buyers with a very kind of humble approach is very, very beneficial. And I've been on numerous phone calls with buyers, and they've told me, gosh, I didn't know that company A had a win-loss program. I'm really impressed that they're doing this, that they're collecting, that they're interested enough to take the time to collect my feedback, and for somebody to look at this information and aggregate, other buyer information and see how they can do better. And importantly, buyers have told me, I'm going to look at this vendor more seriously in the future because they're serious about improving themselves and getting the right product or service to us. So it can be very, very beneficial. We usually don't have a problem getting buyers to speak to us, and I can tell you that in some cases it's almost like a therapy session, that they want to tell us and they're pouring out their heart about the opportunity, and we get a lot of really good detail from buyers.
Great. Thanks, Carolyn. We have a few questions along the same lines of um, how do you get the sales reps to voluntarily submit win-loss sales opportunities?
That's a great question, and that's an area where we see a lot of our clients stumbling, if you will, because a lot of times in organizations, the sales reps, especially when a new win-loss program is introduced, the first thought is, oh no, I'm going to be fired. If I lost a deal and somebody starts nosing around in that deal, I could get fired from this. So there's really a couple of things here that I would point to. One is the tone that the leadership within the organization sets is really, really important. And the tone that we strongly suggest that set is one in which we say, this is a learning opportunity for us as an organization. This is not the opportunity where we're going to be pointing fingers and skewering one particular person or one particular account team. We want to understand what happened in this situation, what happened in this opportunity, so that we can get better. Because we at Primary Intelligence do win and loss reviews on ourselves, we are very, very empathetic to those loss reviews and to losses within the organization. So we tend to try and be very careful in terms of those debriefings and the discovery sessions. But really the important point here is that this can help you. This can help you going forward. If you have more information from your buyers, you're going to win more deals. It's also important that the sales leadership is firmly on board with the win-loss program. If you have a sales leadership that says, you don't really need to do that, I don't know what that's all about, you don't need to submit those opportunities to the win-loss program, that's a problem, because it's telling the sales reps it's not a priority. You really need to have the sales leadership on board that's saying this is a #1 priority, you need to submit them. In some cases, if you're using Salesforce.com, for example, you can mandate that they must include certain fields for the win-loss program before they're able to close out an opportunity. So that's another way. It's just a combination of carrots and sticks in terms of getting the sales team firmly on board with the program.
Well, thanks, Carolyn. It looks like we have time for one more question. Too often, our larger global customers that accept a win-loss interview will not discuss pricing nor divulge information about competitors. Do you have any thoughts or best practices to help overcome this?
That's a great question as well, and I've been doing this type of work for a very long time now, and I know that when questions about pricing and competitive information come up, people can be very closed-mouthed. So what I would say here is, to the extent that you can, try to include that information in an online survey. If you can broach the topic in a telephone survey, that's great too. But for the most part, in terms of pricing questions specifically, because we do have people sometimes going sideways on those questions with us, we tend to put those in the online feedback and allow them to say, no, I'm not going to answer them. And we need to respect that. Sometimes they might have agreements in place with different vendors, and so we need to be able to respect that, the fact that they are not willing to divulge pricing information. Same with competitive information. We really try our best to get all of our respondents to give us information about competitors because we want a point of reference, right? We want to know how we're doing, yes, overall, but also in relation to other companies in the market. Well, sometimes people will just, they'll give very short or they'll give very high-level answers. And what I would recommend is you just do your best, right? You just keep asking the questions. You'll have enough feedback from enough buyers on competitors if you're doing enough of these reviews that you'll be able to start putting a picture together with that information. I tend to look at things, when I can't get information from people, I tend to look at it as I'd rather have half a loaf of bread than no loaf of bread at all. I'd rather have the feedback that they're willing to give me on my own company or my client versus not getting any feedback at all. So we do our best, we ask the question, we always will ask and try, but in some situations you just can't get that very sensitive information. And so you have to look to other interviews and other sources to try and fill in those gaps.
Great. Thanks, Carolyn. Shall we talk about our upcoming research?
Yep. I know we're just coming up on the top of the hour here, so we're going to just go quickly through this here. I've listed some upcoming research that we're planning. We've got on our research roadmap at Primary Intelligence. I mentioned we'll be doing another state of win-loss this year at the end of the year. We're also going to be looking at state of customer experience, the other area that we focus on here. So please look for information about those surveys coming up. We're also planning to do some sales intelligence analysis. As I mentioned, understanding buyer needs, really, really important. So we want to look at how understanding buyer needs, how companies are performing, what's most important to buyers. We'll also look at some of the other sales criteria as well, but we'll split that out. We'll do some overlays in terms of different vertical industries and different segments, different geographies. And then another area that we're planning to focus on is buyer persona research. So how does the information, the feedback from a CIO differ from a CFO or differ from somebody in a business unit, differ from somebody in procurement? And again, we'll overlay that research with information about vertical market segments and so forth. I don't have a whole lot up here on purpose because I wanted to appeal to all of you. If there are certain topics that you're interested in us focusing on and doing syndicated market research on, win-loss, customer experience types of research and papers on, please let me know. We're really looking for topics that are most useful and most relevant to you. So at any point, please feel free to reach out to me, and if we can add it to our research roadmap, we will. If it's just too custom and we don't have the availability to do this kind of as a syndicated off-the-shelf report, we can certainly talk about doing custom research for you as well. Last but not least, I wanted to share with you the prize winners from the random drawings that we did. As I mentioned, we're giving away an iPad mini and a $100 Amazon gift card to our first and second prize winners. So the first prize winner for the iPad mini is going to Anne-Marie Christensen. Anne-Marie is a market strategist at Optum, which is part of United Health Group. And Anne-Marie is based in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. She has been in her current role since 2013. So Anne-Marie, congratulations, and we will be getting the iPad mini out to you within the next couple of days. Our second prize winner is Dan Gerst. Dan works in competitive intelligence and market research at QS1 in Greenville, South Carolina. Dan has been in his current role for quite a while, since 2003. And Dan is the winner of our $100 Amazon gift card. And likewise, Dan, congratulations, and we will be getting that out to you shortly as well. The only thing I wanted to kind of just conclude here with is we are very interested in having an ongoing dialogue with all of you. If you would like to connect with us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on our blog, please feel free to do so. We're really interested in your feedback. As I mentioned, we do take feedback very seriously internally at Primary Intelligence, so please reach out to us and let us have a dialogue with you.